Well, here it is in the flesh, the Game & Watch Super Mario Brothers. Yeah, I've bought one of these and I just can't resist reviewing it. Will I have anything revolutionary to say about it? Well, probably not, but let's give it a go. So let's start with the box. It's got one, which is a good start, and it's got a front and a back too, which is excellent. Yes, and it does remind us there is no AC adapter included, but well, this is the 21st century, who hasn't got 1,000 willing USB ports at the ready these days. It comes in this plastic slipcase with the Super Mario Brothers branding on it and things printed on it, but, well, actually when you slide it out, you're left with what looks like an authentic recreation of the original Game & Watch widescreen packaging, which is a nice touch, though the original ball packaging didn't look quite like this, I don't think, but I'm being pedantic. What's in the box? Well, let's take a look, shall we? Special thanks to you. Well, isn't that nice? Is this an original part of the Game & Watch line? I've no idea. I'm not wealthy enough to actually own any original Game & Watch boxes. But anyway, moving on to the contents, we've got the essential and slightly miserly USB cable, Type-C, not really long enough to be all that useful, and of course we've got the machine itself, and a cardboard thing and a fairly useless instruction booklet. Surprisingly sparse really, I thought there'd be more, but it just tells you how to turn it on and not to eat the battery in several languages, and that's about it. Well, let's turn this thing on and see what it does. The recessed switch on the side turns it on or wakes it from sleep mode. Unlike the original Game & Watch, this is not an always on thing. And here it is. The time display appears to be the default mode. We have the very sparse menu screen, but setting the time is easy enough. Thrilling time setting action here. But let's not dwell on that, let's move on to the meat of the thing and, well, have a look at some of the games, which is easy enough, just hitting the game button to bring up the menu. And yes, you'll note it starts right from where I left off when I tried it out before, so let's reset and start from the very beginning. The auto suspend feature is very handy. And up the volume whilst I'm at it. Actually, it turns out the volume from the time screen is separate from the game, so you can set them both individually, which is quite nice. Holding down the A button gives a hardly well-hidden cheat mode awarding you infinite lives, so let's do that for the moment. And yet, here it is, Super Mario Brothers on a tiny thing, the Game & Watch version. How does it play? Well, really well, actually. This is definitely the original Super Mario Brothers. It's emulated, it's not recreated. Somebody's already been poking around in the firmware and discovered the original ROM file, so it definitely is being emulated. Although somehow patched, presumably to allow an updated year on the title screen and the aforementioned cheat mode. And it all seems to have been done well enough so that unless you're a very serious speedrunner, you're not going to notice anything different about this version. Yeah, it plays really well. The controls feel good to me. The D-pad, well, the Game & Watch was the birth of the D-pad, and here it is as good as it ever was. Maybe a little smaller than what you might be used to, but authentic to the original machines and not that far removed from the NES or later Nintendo consoles. The A and B buttons are the only possible wrinkle. These are fully rubberized, again like the original, but quite a bit different from the hard plastic you'd find on any control pad made since. Still, they work pretty well, and after a couple of minutes of acclimatization, they shouldn't pose much of a problem. Yeah, it definitely feels a noticeable amount better than the majority of these emulation handhelds that you can pick up, even some of the officially branded premium ones. Yeah, Nintendo, well, they know what they're doing with this sort of thing, don't they? The screen is very nice too. It does honestly look a lot better in person than it does here on camera. I'd struggle to capture it properly. The colours look good, it's bright and vibrant, not washed out. There's not any noticeable aspect ratio mismatch here. I haven't measured it, but it looks to be pretty close to the original. There's no aliasing or shimmering, despite how it looks in this footage, as you sometimes get on these screens. I don't know what the resolution of the actual screen is, but however it's being scaled, it's doing it well. It's not flagship smartphone quality, but it's good for a device like this, and the viewing angle isn't bad either. Good enough for most use cases, I would say. The sound isn't quite as good, it's a little bit harsh, but well, it's still quite a bit better than your average budget handheld. There's no headphone output, which made capturing this a bit more difficult for me, but I don't think that's a huge deal, is it? Do you really need the sound of the NES in your ears? But probably not. It's, you know, the speaker is good enough. If you were doing other stuff with this device, it wouldn't be that wonderful, but for playing Mario, it'll do. What's the hardware underneath? Well, it's a 32-bit microcontroller based on the ARM Cortex M7. Really common on all kinds of mobile devices, but actually I'm struggling to find reference to any specific device that makes use of it. So, well, it's kind of difficult to know what its performance is going to be like relative to other things. Let's just change gears here for a moment and have a quick flick over to the other game on this, or the other main game on this, Super Mario Bros. 2. It definitely makes sense to have this on here. It was the direct sequel to the original Mario Bros. And well, it is famously challenging. The classic Game & Watch series always had Game A and Game B, easy and hard mode essentially, so this provides a pleasing symmetry, I suppose. This was originally a Famicom Disk System release, but there doesn't seem to be any reference to that here at all. It seems to be the exact same version of the ROM that popped up on the Virtual Console services in recent years. It's a nice addition, I'm glad it's on here, and yes, like Super Mario Bros. 1, it seems to be extremely authentic to the original. And the same Infinite Lives cheat works here too as well, thankfully. The big question for a lot of people remains though, is it hackable? And the answer is probably yes, but it won't be easy. YouTuber Stacksmashing has already had it in bits and made some preliminary analysis in a video which I'll link to now. The biggest problem facing the average user is the fact that the USB port only has power connections. If you want to reflash the firmware, you'll need to open the console and use some sort of specialised debugging tool. It seems likely that it will be possible to change the ROMs in the system at least, but there's only 1 megabyte of flash memory to play with, so even then what you can do will be limited. So let's move things on a bit and take a look at the final treat in store with Ball. Let's reset the game once again. It suspends automatically and I'll try not to mess up the settings too much. What can I possibly say about the inspiringly named Ball? Well, it was the first of the Game & Watch line, probably Nintendo's first international success, coming along before even Donkey Kong. It was definitely a pioneer in handheld gaming, and as a nostalgic curio, it's definitely got its place. You're given a decent amount of control options, actually, allowing you to use either the D-pad or the buttons, or both. If you're a real hardcore player of the original, that muscle memory will still come in useful. Is this really thrilling? Well, no, it's not, but it's a pleasing continuity with the original Game & Watch line, and it's a nice detail. This is definitely a device that seems heavily primed to hit those nostalgic buttons, and this is part of it. You know what, overall I do like this little device, as you can probably tell. On a scale of 1 to 1100, I'd give it at least 973 if pressed. It's probably not ever going to be like the NES or Super NES Classic, where you could do all kinds of stuff, even adding all new emulators, not without serious hardware modification. The system on a chip it uses isn't nearly as powerful, so I understand the internal memory is limited and the expansion capabilities aren't going to be all that great. But as a sort of fantasy Game & Watch, the kind of thing kids in the 80s dreamed of, well, it's a fun little thing to have. I suppose the only real disappointment might be the watch part of the Game & Watch. Yes, back in the old days, the time-telling functionality might have been a fairly distant second on the list of reasons why people bought one of these, but these days, well, this might have appealed to a lot of people as a desk clock gadget, but it doesn't seem to be quite set up to do that. Unlike the originals, there's no kickstand on the back, so you can't leave it stood up, and yes, the display goes into sleep mode after 3 minutes anyway, with no way that I've found to change it. There's no alarm, which was a fairly common feature of the Game & Watch line and might have been nice to have, though that said, the original Ball didn't have one either. In fact, it seems like Nintendo went out of their way to discourage its use as a clock. Why? Well, battery life might have been a consideration. This uses the same battery as the Joy-Cons of the Switch, giving it about 8 hours. Not all that bad for a device like this, but not really practical for a clock. Yes, you could keep it plugged in all the time, but even that is going to be hard on the battery. There could also be issues with screen burn if it's left on for long periods, or even overheating. A shame, because it would have made a nice display piece sat on a shelf. A deal breaker? Well, not for me, maybe for you if you can get hold of one. They do seem to be in short supply. Okay then, time to come to a screeching halt now. I think I've not really done anything quite like this before, so I hope it went acceptably. I do hope I'll be doing more of this stuff in the future, but maybe not something every other bugger on YouTube has already reviewed. But, well, this would be as well as rather than instead of my other stuff, which a lot of you seem to like, so keep watching. Thanks, as always, to my super generous and elite group of patrons. Thank you very much, folks. And if you'd like to support me, well, click on the links below or wherever they appear, and I will see you next time, folks.